Let me start with a question. Have you ever walked past a house so many times that it became invisible to you? Not because it was empty, but because it felt too normal to question. That is exactly how this story began. In a quiet suburban neighborhood somewhere in the United States, there was a small wooden house at the end of a straight road. Every house on that street looked similar. Clean lawns, mailboxes, soft porch lights in the evening. It was the kind of place where nothing ever seemed to happen. But there was one house that slowly started to feel different. House number 114. At first, nobody thought much about it. A man lived there alone. He kept to himself. He was not loud, not social, not someone people really remembered after meeting once. And in a place like that, silence is not unusual. But over time, silence became something else. It became absence. And absence, when it lasts long enough, becomes suspicious. Still, nobody acted on it. Until one day, something changed that made it impossible to ignore. A smell. It started small, almost unnoticeable. A faint odor near the backside of the house. Neighbors assumed it was garbage or maybe something rotting outside. But days turned into weeks, and the smell did not go away. In fact, it got stronger. Soon, people started avoiding walking near that side of the street. Windows were kept shut more often. Conversations about House 114 slowly increased, but always in strange things began to appear. Mail piled up near the door, newspapers that were never collected, grocery deliveries left untouched. And sometimes, late at night, neighbors thought they saw a dim light inside a room, but they were never sure, because nothing ever moved. No visitors, no coming or going, just stillness. And then the flies came. Not a few, not random, but enough to make people uncomfortable enough to finally speak up. Still, even then, no one wanted to be the first to call authorities. Because in neighborhoods like this, people believe one simple rule: mind your own business, until the business starts leaking out into your world. The turning point came when a neighbor, who lived directly across the street, started noticing something even more disturbing. Every morning, the curtains of House 114 remained exactly the same position. No change, no movement, like time inside that house was frozen. And then one morning, the neighbor noticed something else. The front door was slightly open, just a crack. That detail alone made them uneasy, because it meant someone had either gone in or never locked it in the first place. That is when the welfare check was finally requested. A simple call, just to make sure everything was okay. At first, it seemed routine. But when officers arrived, the atmosphere changed immediately. Even before entering the house, they noticed the smell. It was stronger than anything reported before. Heavy, stale, and unmistakable. The officers knocked on the door. No response. They knocked again. Still nothing. After a few minutes of waiting, they made the decision to enter. And the moment the door was forced open, everything changed. The first step inside the house felt like stepping into a different world. The air was thick, heavy, almost impossible to breathe normally. One of the officers immediately had to step back, but the rest continued. The interior was not just messy, it was layered, like the house had been abandoned inside itself for years. Rooms were filled with clutter, stacked objects in pathways barely wide enough to walk through. But that was not the worst part, because very quickly they found something that made everyone stop. A body, then another, and another. There was no single pattern at first glance. Some appeared to have been there longer than others. Some were in different rooms, placed in ways that suggested they were never moved after death. The officers were confused, shocked, trying to process what they were seeing. And then, from one of the rooms deeper inside the house, they saw him. A man, sitting on a chair, completely still, alive. When they called out to him, he slowly turned his head, not in panic, not in fear, but in recognition, like he had been expecting this moment for a long time. What happened next did not fit the typical crime scene narrative, because the man did not try to run, he did not resist, he did not even look surprised. Instead, he simply stared at the officers for a few seconds and then said something that did not immediately make sense. He said, "I didn't leave them alone, so they didn't leave me alone." At first, investigators thought it was confusion, maybe mental distress, maybe shock. But the more they observed him, the clearer it became that his perception of reality was deeply fractured. He was not acting like someone hiding a crime. He was acting like someone who no longer understood that anything was wrong. As the investigation continued, a deeper picture began to form. This was not a traditional serial killer case. There were no external victims linked to random violence.
Instead, what investigators began to understand was something far more tragic. The man had been living in extreme isolation for a long period of time. At some point in his life, multiple people connected to him had died or disappeared from his normal world. But instead of processing those events in a healthy way, something in his mind broke. He stopped seeing separation as separation, and instead he began to live in a reality where death did not mean absence. It meant presence in a different form. That belief slowly built the world inside that house. A world where decay did not feel like danger. It felt like normal life continuing. When the house was finally cleared and sealed, officers described the experience in one word: not horror, not anger, but sadness. Because what they saw was not a monster. They saw a human being who had completely detached from reality while the rest of the world kept moving. And maybe the most disturbing question this story leaves behind is not what happened inside that house, but how long it went unnoticed outside of it. If someone slowly disconnects from reality right in front of everyone, is it ever truly just one person's responsibility? Or is it something the whole system failed to see?